How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Tales from the Darkside, Season 1, Episode 9, and this one's entitled Word Processor of the Gods. This is from November 25th, 1984, and is directed by Michael Gornick. And if that name sounds familiar, this is the same guy that directed Episode 7, Slippage, which was another pretty fun reality-altering episode, so good choice to bring him back. This episode stars Bruce Davison and is based on a short story from Stephen King. So, yeah, the last of the big Creep Show 3 is here. Obviously, George Romero created the show and wrote the very first episode, and then Tom Savini directed episode 8, Inside the Closet, and here we are, one episode later, Stephen King making his Tales from the Darkside debut, and it's an old story from all the way back in Night Shift, you know? So, really do love seeing a Stephen King adaptation here, and I think there's only 2 Stephen King episodes in the whole series. I wish there was a ton more, but that being said, a really good adaptation here. The teleplay for this episode was adapted by Michael McDowell, and we literally just saw him. He wrote episode 8, Inside the Closet. Now, this is about a man who doesn't really have a great family, but he really loved his nephew. And his brother, the nephew's dad, was kind of a scumbag human being, and it turns out he crashed them all in a car. I think they actually went over a cliff or something, and the whole family died. So the good family's dead, and he's stuck with his bad family, and his evil brother killed them all. But before he died, the nephew built a homemade word processor. You see, our main character is a writer, which is no big surprise because this is a Stephen King story. But the upgrade from the typewriter to the word processor, it really is something that, you know, it's kind of lost on us because, you know, that technology is all so old. But basically, this was the first time you could really write on a computer, you know, and then print it out. When you had a typewriter, if you wanted to change something, you would have to either retype the whole page, or just take out the paper and handwrite the corrections, or get some whiteout, cover it up, and then run it back through the machine again. It was a lot harder to change stuff, and giving someone a word processor, if they're a writer, they say in the episode that it could up their output by like 50%. So it's a really nice gift. It's all handmade, because word processors were so expensive, and plus, hey, this is hand making a PC before it was a cool thing, you know? But it's all handmade, and they don't even know if it will work, but when he starts messing with it, he finds out that it's not just a word processor. You see, the cool thing about most word processors is they can change the story, but this word processor can change reality. So it's a man in a sucky position who realizes he has all the control to change reality to whatever he wants it to be. But there's, of course, a cost to that power. It starts to really eat on him, the decisions he has to make, and we do get a fun fever dream sequence. But overall, a really cool episode. And I have to give Darkside major props for giving the story a place to be adapted. Obviously, dealing with technology, there's only so far that you can make this story. I mean, if Word Processor of the Gods hadn't have been adapted, and it was now, imagine trying to pitch a word processor story nowadays, you know? So there was only a limited time that this story could have been adapted, but it's a short story, and it'd be really hard to stretch it out into a movie. So Tales from the Darkside, right place, right time to adapt this. It's Romero's show. Romero and King are friends, and it's someone he trusts. And yeah, this was basically the best place for this story to live, and I'm glad it got a chance to do so. But it's a fun, reality-altering story. It is about power and what that power can do and the decisions you might be surprised that you make. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into more specifics. I'm going to be talking a bit about the plot, but I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers. I do want to say my piece on a few of the plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what this story is about. But we open up with this guy. He's your main character. He's one of your Stephen King writers. But this guy's only had one book published, and it didn't sell super well, and most of the critics just ignored it. It only got 2 reviews, and both of them were negative. So he wants to publish another book. He has been published, but it's not the best result, and he wants to be successful. And most of the writing he's doing is just, technical work where he can't let his creativity loose, Now, he has his family, and his family are, slobs. They're not really the best of people. His wife, we first see her in the kitchen. The actual first shot of this is just a slow pan over a very messy kitchen, and she actually starts to kind of dig at him, where he's working and trying to be successful, and she goes, "Yeah, I bring in the real money. I'm good at bingo." So yeah, she always wants to go out and play bingo. She thinks she's good at it, even though bingo is 100% luck. It's basically a longer form of gambling. But she goes, "I'm good at bingo. I'm accomplished," which is of course going to dig into him because he's really working and trying hard. But then he has his son, and his son just sits in his room, does nothing all day but play guitar very loudly, very inconsiderate of the people around him. They'll try to focus on something, get work done, or try to have a conversation, and the son just blares his guitar. And later on in the episode, the dad refers to him as a creep. And you kind of wonder, for a dad to say something like that about his kid, what did the kid do that made the dad refer to him as just a creep, So you kind of have to wonder what's up with this kid. You don't get to see him too terribly often in the episode, but it's an enigma there. But anyway, he's grieving because his brother and his whole family just died. Now, his brother, he's one of those people that, even though he's dead, people can't really say good things about him. Which, if there's one time people are going to say good things about you, it's after you pass. But no one seems to really be able to do that with this guy. And the main guy says, out of all the horrible things, most of them he tested on me first. So you know that he's really been abused by his brother. But on top of that, his brother's wife is the woman he had a crush on. And you have to know the brother probably knew that he really liked this girl, but still moved in anyway and took her, and not only married the woman he had a crush on, but would ultimately kill her in a car wreck. So that's not great. But his son, the nephew, the brother's son, is a really good kid by all accounts. He's the one that people are most upset that he died. He was a little technical genius, and he was always building things. And it's a case of, out of all the people that had to die, why did this kid had to die? He was special, and he would have gone on to accomplish great things, but he's dead now. Now, the nephew and the main character were good friends, and he says, "Hey, I'm gonna build you that word processor because it can really help your career." For some reason, this flashback scene is in this weird, tent. It looks like the walls are made out of sheets. I really don't know what was going on with this scene. I guess it was supposed to look surreal or something. But anyway, the nephew actually does fulfill that promise before he dies, and one of his neighbors, at his request, brings over these big boxes containing the word processor. And yeah, for a machine that essentially only does a proto version of Word, like Word before Word was Word. It only does one thing, and it does it not as good as nowadays. But big, lots of boxes. And they unpack this thing, and I really do like, it's a homemade version. This is just a version of the word processor that a kid could make with what a kid could buy. And it's got like wood paneling on the side with big holes drilled in for ventilation, tape holding the thing together, a CPU without a real case, you know, so you can see into the insides. I really do like, you know, the idea that the kid just made this out of whatever he could find. And he talks to the neighbor like, do you think this will really work? Do you think a kid could build a word processor? And the neighbor starts to talk about, oh, kids do amazing things. And he, you know, mentions a few times where kids have built amazing stuff. And later, after the neighbor leaves, he fires it up. He takes out a floppy disk, an old school like 12-inch floppy disk. I have to say, you know, looking back, way back in the day, I remember the little floppy disk, the one that didn't really flop, and that's a really old form of storage. I mean, nowadays we have USB and cloud storage that can hold thousands of times more than what you could on one of those old floppy disks. I remember those, the little ones, and I feel old for that, but these are the big ones, the ones that actually flopped, and it's so weird to see him pulling that out and using it. He sticks it in the machine, and when he turns it on, it displays a happy birthday, uncle message, so a sweet sentiment there, and it appears to actually work, so it's working, and he starts typing, but he doesn't really know what to type, and he's typing a sentence and changing it a few times, going back and making different sentences, just kind of spitballing. But you do see you can change stuff. That's the whole point with a word processor, is changing things. And just randomly, he's looking around his office, and he types, "There's a picture of my wife on the shelf." And then he's like, why did I type that? And he deletes it. And then he looks over, and the picture of his wife is deleted. And he immediately freaks out and types, "There is a picture of my wife on the shelf again," and it doesn't come back. He's like, what do I do? And he looks down, and he pushes execute. And when he pushes execute, the picture comes back. And he realizes that's how the machine works. Type something, and if you push delete, it deletes it. And then if you push execute, it makes it so. So he tests this, and he writes, "There's a bag of 12 Spanish doubloons on the floor," and he pushes execute, and it appears, and he goes and he tests it, and he's like, this is worth thousands of dollars, this is amazing. And he goes back to the computer, and he's about to write, "I have ideas for best-selling novels," but as he's about to do that, you see whenever he pushes execute, the computer thinks for a minute and then goes done, but before it can do that, the power goes out. His son's upstairs in the room playing guitar so loud, he tripped a breaker, and he gets really mad at the son. He doesn't get the novel ideas because the computer turned off too soon. And he goes and he yells up at his son, "Hey, don't trip the power." And then he starts to think about how his son's a creep, he's not happy in his marriage, and the girl he really liked and his nephew that he really liked, they died and they really shouldn't have, and he gets tempted into changing reality. And I do have to say, this is one of the strengths of horror, is it's a concept that we've all maybe thought about loosely in our minds, you know, what if our life was different? What if I did this instead of that? What if I wound up with this person and my life was better? But to be honest, you know, changing reality like that, you know, when you think about how it affects other people, is kind of cruel, you know. Just imagine how really much of a horror movie The Sims would be if they were all real living people that you were messing with. And that's sort of the thing with horror, is so many other movies, your main character has to be pure. He has to be a good guy. But with horror, you can say, yeah, this is kind of messed up. Let's do it anyway. And that's really the good thing with horror, is we want to explore these ideas even if they're not 100% ethical, this is fiction, it doesn't matter. So it's like, hey, it's a horror story, we're gonna go down this route even if it is messed up. If it's messed up, that's kind of the point. And you can see after he changes his first big thing, he has this weird, trippy fever dream where he's being lectured for it. And he's like, I didn't do anything, I just changed the world to be different, you know? And it really starts to play on him, but he wants his life to be better. And you can see, you know, there is a good reason for that. His brother killed two very good people. What if life was different? But it does take a toll to change that. And on top of all this, the word processor is cobbled together. It's made out of little mix-matched pieces, and it won't necessarily live that long. So the machine doesn't have long to operate before it just, you know, goes up in smoke, and he has to set the world right before there's no takebacks. Overall, a really fun episode about control and power and how you would manipulate the world to be the best for you if you could, but also knowing that if you manipulated the world, that would impact the people around you, you know, so there is a dark side to it. So I do really like this episode, you know, being horror, you can say, hey, this is a little messed up, but it's fiction. Let's just think about what would happen. What would you do if you had all that power? And I do really like this story. You know, it's a place that not many other authors would go. And, you know, a Stephen King story about a word processor, it's short and you gotta adapt it before the technologies are not relevant anymore. And this is really the perfect place and time for this story. And it's really fun. And I think this, yeah, I'm pretty sure this was from Night Shift. So one of Stephen King's earlier stories. And I really like just adapting as many Stephen King stories as possible. I wonder how many stories from Night Shift haven't been adapted, save for Dollar Babies. But anyway, great Stephen King story. Really, really fun. Just the idea of crazy power and what that can do to your head. Really cool, and I definitely would recommend it. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. And to everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. If you guys want to see more, you can click right there and see more. This should be my Tales from the Darkside playlist. I've reviewed every episode up until this one, so 8 episodes. Plus, I've already talked about the 2 Christmas ones in December. And I reviewed the comic adaptation of the Joe Hill reboot that never made it to TV. So there's a bunch of stuff in that playlist if you want to see me talk about more Darkside. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Tales from the Darkside playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.